Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of JKL Media, your podcast where three friends talk about stuff. We are finishing up our discussion of Devs, the Hulu show that came out in 2020. We have been going through this. We're covering the last two episodes of this mini-series, and Karen's going to lead us our discussion.
Alrighty, so we're finally at the end of Devs. We are talking about so descriptively named episode 7 and episode 8. Episode 7 first, a lot of things happen and some things that maybe are gutting and some really cool stuff. So I want to talk about something that you guys hinted at, that maybe Pete had something going on. And it turns out that he did. So what did you guys think about Pete coming out as the bodyguard?
I think we need to come in with our overall thoughts before we get to that.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about our overall thoughts.
Okay, because I want to respond to this in a different way than I normally would, because this show has a lot of the elements of one of my favorite series from Stephen King is The Dark Tower. And that was a 25-year journey for us who read the first book and had to wait for all the volumes to come out. And because of the nature of the story, people were guessing what the ending was going to be. And King obviously knew this. So he wrote this like he took a step back from the story and told it from the creator's point of view. And he's called it the coda. And I just want to read this because I think it summarizes my mindset that we're going to have for this 2 episodes. And here it goes. I've told my tale all the way to the end and am satisfied. It was, I set my watch and warrant on it, the kind only a good God would save for last, full of monsters and marvels and voyaging here and there. I can stop now, put my pen down and rest my weary hand. Although not perhaps not forever, the hand that tells the tales has a mind of its own and a way of growing restless. Yet some of you who have provided the ears without which no tale can survive a single day are likely not so willing. You are the grim, goal-oriented ones who will not believe that the joy is in the journey rather than the destination, no matter how many times it has been proven to you. You are the unfortunate ones who still get the love-making all confused with the paltry squirt that comes to the end to end the lovemaking. The orgasm is, after all, God's way of telling us we're finished, at least for the time being, and should go to sleep. You are the cruel ones who deny the gray havens where tired characters go to rest. You say you want to know how it all comes out. You say you want to follow Roland into the tower, and you say that is what you paid your money for, the show you came to see. So that's maybe my long-winded way of saying that it's the journey and not the destination that matters in stories. So with that is the mindset that I have for these last 2 episodes of Devs.
Okay, that makes sense.
One of the things that I thought of is on Lost, when the final episode aired, people who were casual fans said they lied to us. They've been dead the whole time. And even though in the very first episode, they said this wasn't purgatory, and you want to go, you aren't paying attention. This is totally different. This is something, and we could do a whole episode of just sometimes fans are upset that this creator, the storyteller, didn't tell the story I wanted them to tell. And Kevin Smith used to say, no, Penn Jillette say, good, then go do that story. That isn't the story I want to tell. Like you said, oh, why didn't you, when he did the BS episode, you should have done a expose on atheism. He goes, you're right, go do it. You know, there's nothing stopping you from telling that story that you want to tell. However, this is the story I wanted to tell. You enjoy the story, you don't enjoy the story, but I don't think it's right to say, well, it was the wrong story. Now, it's perfectly acceptable to say, I didn't like the story, or I didn't like that ending, but that doesn't mean they were quote unquote wrong. I liked the last 2 episodes, though I'm disturbed by things And I don't think it was as strong as ending as I was expecting, but I was really enjoyed the 8-episode journey, and I would not have seen this show. And I'm really glad you brought me up and I did get to see it.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel. I enjoyed the journey. The destination was not what I was hoping for, but beyond that, I'm very glad that I watched the series, and because it did do some really cool things from a artistic and technical point of view that I quite enjoyed, and it played true to what it set out with. So I can't complain about that. It's just that we've seen this story told in so many different ways. I'm thinking off the top of my head, the Moriarty episode from Star Trek Next Generation, where they put him in a cube at the end, even though he thinks he's stepped out of the holodeck and gone out into the universe. So that was done in an hour. This one took 8 hours to tell basically the same story, but it did it in a much more elegant way, though.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I really loved about this series is that it made you think about things, deeper things than just I'm watching entertainment. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciated the intelligence of the storytelling throughout. And
when we get to it, I'll go into detail, but I think maybe Jesse's alluding to it, but there was one element of this series that in these last 2 episodes that I really didn't like. And when we get to it, you'll know.
Okay. That makes sense. There's a lot of stuff to like and a lot of stuff that you might not like. I get that. And I have to say, the first time I watched this, I thought the ending was almost too neat. Okay. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I really do see there's a huge value in watching this show.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So that's mostly why I wanted you guys to watch it. And I was very afraid from the very start that you guys would hate how it ended. But again, one of the things that I knew is that you guys would appreciate the storytelling. So I'm glad it met those expectations.
Yeah.
All right.
So to get back to your original question, Pete, a little bit disappointing that was his only function in the show, was to be there to kill Kenton at the end. Or is it Denton? Kenton. Yeah. So, but did I mishear him? It sounded like at one point he was repeating the same phrases that we heard Jesus say on the cross. Was that, or am I just?
Well, he was speaking in Russian.
No, but was that what it was? It sounded like Aramaic to me.
No, he's a Russian operative, so he was speaking in Russian.
Yeah, it didn't sound Russian, but maybe I was just looking for a connection that wasn't there. Because he looked like Jesus, right? So I was hoping that there was going to be some really weird thing going on there, but it didn't happen. So that's too bad. But
I was happy that there was something else, that go back to Chekhov's gun, the old idea that when you're telling a story, if you see something in the first act, something has to happen by the third act. And so by having this guy be more than, I was glad for that payoff. Once again, dialogue is usually what makes me happy. And the dialogue he's having with Lily of there are 2 dead bodies. It's like that midnight mass scene where the serenity prayer, we have to deal with what we can change and then accept what we can't change. You have 2 dead bodies in your apartment. You have 2 choices. You can either contact the CIA, not the FBI or the police, or you can get on a plane and fly to Hong Kong and spend time with your mom and be there the rest of your life. You have A or B. And now she ends up choosing C, which is interesting, but I liked that scene. And I don't know if necessarily the police couldn't have helped her. She didn't have to go to the CIA, but it is a very, Kenton truly is as evil as we thought he was. And so I liked that scene on how that doing it and how that forced Lily to go do what she wants to do, what they foresee that she has to do. I thought that was really well written.
Yeah, I like that too, that the A, B choice and she chose C. That's very Lily. So that was a sufficient motivation for or explanation of why she was going back or going to Devs. So I did like that quite a bit. I knew as soon as you said you got choice A or choice B that I said, no, she's not going to do either one of those. She's going to do something else. So that was well done.
It's also foreshadowing for her character that she draws outside the lines.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're dropping a huge hint there.
Yeah.
Even though you probably don't get it until you see her other C choice later on.
Right.
I was gutted in this episode to see Jamie killed.
Yes. Yep.
And if he just hadn't hesitated in the kitchen, it would have been a whole different story. You know, he looks at the picture of Lily and Sergey, and he cuts a lemon to put on the side of her drink. And otherwise, he would have been already out of the way of Kenton's bullets.
Yeah.
Jamie didn't get no breaks in this series.
He sure did not.
No.
He did not. An ending that was not deserved.
No.
But again, that's storytelling. Kenton would have killed him.
Yes.
There's no other way that could have gone. And we also see just how far into the black hole Kenton has gone.
Yes.
He's single-minded. He wants to kill. That's it. He's saving his own butt. And it turns out that he doesn't save his own butt because of forces that he overlooked in his overzealousness.
Yes.
He overlooked that Pete might have been something to reckon with.
Yeah.
Where normally, you know, this guy hanging out in front of Lily's place, he might have looked into it.
Yeah. And he's a prime example of when you're done with a character, you kill him off.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And unceremoniously.
Right.
Pete broke in and that was it. He's going to kill Lily, so I got to protect her. And I did also like that Pete, one of the things that Pete shows is that he was only there for Sergey, but as soon as he got to know Lily, he realized that Lily was going to be someone that he took under his protection. So I thought that was cool that we saw like this dimension. We had seen like the Russian operatives being unfeeling and all that, and he subverted that. Okay, so what else do we get? Okay, so she takes the C decision. This was something I was unclear about. Why did she feel the need to go to Devs, especially since she had been told and she didn't want to go to Devs? Why did she do that? And I think it's almost a mirror to Kenton in that once Jamie had died and all these things had happened to her, she didn't want to give up her life. So she wanted to get her revenge on Forrest and the Devs team. And I think that was almost a blinding, gotta go because I gotta confront them and they have to pay for what they've done. Because otherwise, I don't think she would have gone to Devs. She had the ability to block that out and to say, I don't have to go. But in this case, she had to. So what did you guys think about that part of it, that she did end up going to Devs?
Yeah, I think that's a fair nitpick of why is she, but I think the reality is she knows something significant is supposed to happen. They've said that because this timeline ending so I think she's drawn to that to figure out, okay, what's going on, because A or B doesn't sound appealing to her, right? She doesn't want to go to Hong Kong and live there. And she doesn't want to get involved with the CIA, so she picks C. I don't know what she's hoping to accomplish. I don't know what she's thinking is going to happen, but it does seem very much in character that, okay, well, I don't know what my next move is, so let's go to the campus and let's see what happens.
Yeah, the Russians' two choices, plus the conversation she had with Jamie about what the Devs were up to, and the fact that Jamie said that the problem with these guys is they all think they're gods. And I think she just really couldn't just walk away from that. And I think those two things are combined is why she ended up going to to devs or making the decision to go to devs because of that. And she's got the belief or the plan that she's somehow mess up their plans. So I think I think it's subtle, but I do think it was sufficient for me to believe that she would go to devs based on what we've seen of her character.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you guys saw that it was in character, because one thing is that you could see that is out of character for her, but there was that little sliver of, I gotta go. I have to go. We also got a beat with Lyndon and Katie in this episode. We see that come around a bit. I did like that when she wakes up with Forrest says, oh, remember Lyndon's in the back of your car. There's that whole thing. So, I mean, they knew that as well. So what about Katie and Lyndon on the bridge there? What'd you think about that conversation?
So I didn't like this at all. We have said multiple times, or at least I have, that Katie is, in fact, I almost thought she was an android or a robot because she is so emotionless and so detached. That seemed cruel to make Lyndon do this test that you knew they would fail. And I, once again, I would have been happier if, and maybe they didn't, maybe this is implied, but maybe Katie reached to try to grab Lyndon when they fall and the blouse or shirt rips, that maybe she's seen every scenario and there's nothing she can do to save Lyndon. But it was almost just, it was callous. Just the only way you're going to get your job back is if you do an act of faith showing that you believe in the system, even though it may kill you. But there is no may, it will kill you. There is no winning scenario from Lyndon, and the idea, but Lyndon's destined to die, I'm just playing my part in it, seems like Lily, you see why she's driven that. And I talked about this last time, that with the time traveler's wife, there is a scene where the young guy, it says, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And he says, and the older one says, yes, you are. No, I'm not. And then something happens and he does exactly what he says he won't do. And it's understood why. I didn't understand Lyndon doing this. I don't get that whole segment. Lou,
you're right on the money. I hated this whole scene for two reasons. One's visceral. I can't stand heights. So when he's over that railing, I was just like, my heart is beating pretty fast too, man. But I believe the intent of this scene was to show that what was going to happen in the next episode was unchangeable, or to build up that expectation, because every scenario that we saw with Lyndon ended up with him falling. But if that's the case, then Katie committed murder, because she knew that there was no scenario where he survived, and she lied to him and told him that he would survive. And the fact that they showed the multiple iterations of her walking away, not one of those realities showed her and Lyndon walking away together. So even if they would have shown that, I would have been okay. So yes, there is a universe where Lyndon lives, but she lied to him. She didn't. There was no situation where he was going to survive. So if their intent was to just show us or make us believe that what was going to happen in the next episode was unchangeable, then I think this was a really crappy way of doing it, and I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, agreed. I think this is the part in the entire show that I thought not only wasn't great, but it also was just, yeah, mean. Yeah. And she has shown, though, Katie, her character, that she's going to do whatever the machine says she's going to do. She's not going to fight it. So it does show a little bit about her character. It does give us a little bit. And I also, the only thing I liked about it is that Lyndon connects all the dots. Lyndon finally says, oh, it's a big circle. I see how it works. And he finally gets it the light goes off in his head about time and the cyclical nature of it and all that. I hate that Lyndon died this way. And the fact that Katie makes him stand like Christ on the cross with his arms out is just maudlin. I thought a bit over the top. I do see what they're doing. They are telling you there's no way to subvert this. What's going to happen is what's going to happen. But I also like that they cement that for you and then they turn around in the last episode and make your mind bend a little bit. Was there anything else in this episode that you guys want to talk about? We had a little bit of Stuart and Forrest, where Stuart has had enough and he decides he's going to go ahead and use the multiverse theory to finish up the computer.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, Stuart is mostly in the last episode. So did you guys have anything else?
I did think where he's quoting a poem and he says, you don't even know who this is, but I guess it wasn't Shakespeare, according to IMDb. It's a different poem. I do think the idea that they all want to play God is a very true statement. And this shows that it is it is hard to get past this. Just as you said, she's committing murder. If you don't push Lyndon to get up on there, Lyndon lives. And I just don't understand. I don't have that. This is blind faith, right? She believes in this machine the same way that certain religious zealots believe. Like, okay, I believe that you're going to be protected. And I don't get Lyndon's upside. We've already talked about that. I've got $10 million. Dude, I'm gone. Versus no, Lyndon has to be part of this program again. Just very much a tragic figure.
That poem is called Abad, Aubade, and it was written by Philip Larkin. But Abad is also a word meaning a love poem or song welcoming or lamenting the arrival of dawn. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it had some kind of hidden meaning or...
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that Stuart has dialed in the machine so that basically they're seeing their own reality, and he's proving that point by jumping ahead a second in time or whatever. So people's reactions are being played out on the screen. Just before they do
that was weird when they're like doing, turn it off.
Yeah. So that sets up the big conflict or issue in the next episode as well, because Lily's walking into this machine that is basically a version of our reality, or it is our reality. He says we're a box within a box within a box. So it's that whole conundrum of which reality is the real reality and all that stuff. So that's interesting. And I think it's important to pick up on this, because without it, Stuart's actions in the next episode don't make sense. But I think he's realized what they've created now is very dangerous. So, and that obviously plays into the next episode. So it's like when you look into a multiple mirror thing, you just sort of feel yourself falling into it, and it's really hard. Your perspective, your frame of reference is lost. So they're really skewing with your perceptions in this series of which reality is the real one now. So it's an interesting setup for sure for the next episode.
Yeah.
The idea, I can't remember what show this was on or some short story I read, right? That if you created a history viewer, that if you went back 1 second, that's history. So literally what they talked about, you were seeing in real life. You can now spy anywhere, any place, any time. There is no privacy left, which for the government and the CIA and National Security Alliance would be a very powerful tool. So, which is perhaps why, if we skip to the end, why they let this program continue to run. Mm-hmm. So,
okay. Yeah. So, shall we move on to the very last episode of Devs?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We do see Stuart being super philosophical in this episode and always hanging around, which makes you think, okay, he's going to do something. right?
Yeah.
And we get Lily and Forrest discussing some things. Forrest already knows what's going to happen, and he's going to let Lily see what's going to happen. So go ahead, give me some thoughts on this.
Well, this is where the pedal has to go to the metal. And this type of philosophical discussions of what's free will and what's determinism and what's real and what's not real, it's a difficult thing to pull off. And because we lack godlike abilities to step outside our own frame of reference in that, it's hard for creative people to come up with new twists on this type of situation in storytelling. So it played out the way that I thought it did, and it still hedged its bets over what was free will versus determinism, because even though Lily didn't carry out the exact same actions in this final episode where she did not shoot Forrest, it seems that the final outcome was the same regardless of what action she took. So is that just the same thing that when you talk to a writer about how they create their stories, they say they have an outline, but how they get from the start to the finish, they could take multiple various paths, but they still end up at the same place by and large. I mean, sometimes the ending changes, and I was hoping that that was going to change. And I guess you could also argue that if the original path that was taken, that Lily shot Forrest, would end with the machine breaking down, versus where she didn't shoot him and Stewart's the one that causes their death, and that seems to allow this alternate reality than the machine to allow these characters to live out life in this simulation. Is that only because Lily didn't kill Forrest? I don't really see the difference between the two, because they both ended up dying, and how they died doesn't really matter. So there's no easy answers for me here. I think the show doesn't want to give you an easy answer, but the thing that still bugs me is why they showed Forrest being so focused on the child, and the wife was just like an afterthought. Like that, I don't know, that just was never explained to me. And so that, again, it's part of my discomfort with how the show ended that. Like I'm okay with if they ended up, oh, we're going to live inside a simulation, but the people have to be like, you have to be able to empathize with him in that. And this blind spot that he had, the show decided to create, whether intentionally or not, with him and his wife, was just so weird. And it also undermines Katie's, like, what was her end game? Like she ends up outside the simulation. It seemed to be that she wanted to take the place of the wife, but they also, Forrest and Katie basically told each other that they didn't love each other as well. So it was just a little, it was not clear enough to me, which makes the ending, which makes the journey to the ending a little less satisfying than it had been up until the 5th and 6th episodes. So I can't say that I liked it. I expected it. I would have just liked it better if the emotional payoff for the characters would have been better.
My issue, was this his long-term plan? Like I had that question. What was Forrest's end game? What was he trying to do? Was he trying to figure out a way to bring his wife and daughter back to life? Was this his long-term goal, to be able to immerse in a different reality where he gets to spend time? I assume that one of the things he talks about is this is one of the good ones. So that implies there's other scenarios where it isn't perfect. It isn't good. And the implication is, I made it where in the coding where you, Lily, will remember your past lives, your actual reality. And we thought that might be a comfort if you're in one of the bad scenarios. Well, why are there multiple scenarios? Why don't you just do one scenario? And so do you live the rest of your life now knowing that this is not real, but what is life? What is real? Is this all a dream in a box?
I mean,
So
if
I
it feels
did
real,
love
it's real, right?
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love the fact that when she gets the chance to talk to Sergio and the whole, let me see your phone, and like, why this? And so he is, in this scenario, he is still a Russian spy. And she goes to Jamie and she finds him and she hugs them. And I mean, that is a very emotional, satisfying that she realizes that he truly cared about her and they had gotten back together in the reality. And now in this new scenario, this new afterlife, is this heaven? No, it's Iowa. But in this new heaven, they get to spend their lives together. And so is she now eternal? So like when as they age and go, will then she die and then get reborn in another scenario and she'll like restart at that point?
Huh?
I just don't know. There's a lot of questions about this. And then like, once again, Katie is just looking very like, can we keep this funding going? What can we keep this going? So a lot of ambiguity at the ending. And my biggest concern, right, is I got an ending for Forrest and Lily, but I don't know if that was what he was working toward, or was this just a pleasant side effect?
Yeah. And also is that where Katie and the senator are? Is that a real reality, or is that just another box inside the box reality? Like, you don't know, right? So it's left wide open. And I would have preferred an ending where they came to that point where they could do this and say, that's not real. I've got you, like Forrest could say to Katie, I've got you. That happened. Now it's time to turn a page and build a new life, or something like that. Like, unfortunately for Lily, that's gone because everybody that she was attached to is dead. But I would have preferred an ending where they say, no, that's not reality. The reality that, as far as I know, is real. This is the only reality that I know is real, and I'm just going to have to pick up the pieces and live my life going forward instead of this stepping into the simulation. So, but yeah, there's too many open threads left to get a satisfying resolution to the series. So that's why I have to focus on the journey that got to there, and that part of the show I really liked, but the landing I didn't find very satisfying.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions left at the end. How long are they going to stay? When the machine turns off, are they just going to blip out of existence? I mean, I'm assuming so. Are they going to die in their fake life? And again, it's fake, maybe because it's inside a machine, but who's to say we're not inside a machine? Who's to say we're not some sort of experiment? I mean, as long as what we feel is real, it's real. So yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in this episode that is like completely unexpected. And I didn't understand why we got there. The one salient point is that they could never see past Lily dying, ever.
Right.
So to me, that meant that the machine was going to end at that point. And you guys said it in the last talk that we had, but I didn't want to comment on that so much. But to me, that means that Stuart did what he did in order to stop the machine, to end the machine's life, as it were. And so they're keeping the part on that is the simulation for Forrest and Lily. But otherwise, it's just going the way of the dodo. They're getting rid of all the rest of it because it's too dangerous to keep that going. Whether that is feasible or not, I mean, it doesn't predict the future anymore. So what's the point of it? It stopped predicting the future. And Stuart realized that I think that's why he stops the machine and forces the ending, and I think he's actually looked into the future. I think he's seen all this play out. And so his ending was clear, is that he had to make this happen for the machine to go offline. And again, that's just my interpretation of what happened. But one of the things I really loved about this finale is that scene where we see Lily throw the gun out of the elevator, because it shows how strong her character is, that she can actually bend the future. She can take that decision to not do what every variation of the future has shown, that she shoots Forrest. And she's decided that she's going to try and change things. One of the reviewers I read about this said, you should have paid more attention to Stewart's poem. Because then you would have known that no matter what you did, Stewart was probably going to pick up and end things. And seeing Katie break down in this episode was also satisfying, that she almost was relieved that Lily could break the chain, and then Stewart turning off the hydraulics or whatever it's called, the force field or whatever that holds up the
electromagnetic field.
Right.
Yeah.
That to her, we've stopped it. Forrest can live. Yay. And then Stewart actually forces his death to happen. She's gutted, just completely gutted. And then she realizes that the only way to help Forrest is to keep him alive in the machine. And so she's going to do that. And if that happens to be Lily as well, then so be it. I don't think she cared at all about what happened to Lily.
Do you think she had a little bit of sorrow in that she wasn't strong enough to save Lyndon?
Do.
That, I think that part of that was, oh my goodness, this isn't predestination, is not necessarily.
I thought she questioned, if it were me, I would have questioned everything about the things that I have done. Why was I not strong enough to metaphorically throw the gun out of the elevator? Why did I just go along with everything?
Yeah.
They all see that someone can take a decision that isn't predetermined by the machine. And so not only Forrest, but Katie and everybody realizes, okay, guess what? It's not determinism. There's some free will going on. And it's everything they know about the machine. They think this machine, and again, they also turn this into Deus instead of devs. That Forrest,
which is another thing I didn't like.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's Alex Garland connecting his movie to the show. So we have Deus Ex Machina being his two things here. And I don't think they go together, really. I mean, the themes are different in both. But the fact that they worship this machine like a god, they took everything that the machine said as what has to be, and that Lily just didn't. She thought for sure she wasn't going to go to devs. And when she shows up there again, it cemented the fact that the machine is God. The machine knows everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they want to see what's going to happen. I think that they thought, or at least Katie did, they thought that after this happened, they would again get like a reset of the machine. They didn't think that the machine was going to die. But again, we see that that's the end. The machine's not going to predict anything else because Lily threw this spanner into the works, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's so difficult here is because you're watching the show and you're trying to really track two threads. You're looking at a macro view and a micro view. And the macro view seems to be deterministic, that no matter what you do, things are going to go the way that they're going to go. Whereas in the micro view, like with Lily with the gun, there you have some free will. And it really reminds me of the talk that Gandalf has with Frodo on the Mines of Moria. He says, it's not ours to decide these things, but what we can decide to do is how we behave or act during these times. So, or paraphrasing, or something to that effect. So in one timeline, Lily shoots Forrest. In another timeline, she doesn't. So that's the choice that you have to face and make. And so you can take that like the hard road or the easy road, and she took the hard road. And that, I don't know if that's intentional or not in the show, but that's really what to me it comes down to, is that you have to look at those two separately. And Katie failed the test terribly, to my mind, and Lily passed it. So that's another way of looking at it.
Yeah, it is, I guess, a satisfying conclusion. It does wrap things up. It leaves me a lot of questions. I go back to there is a lot of unanswered questions as far as what in the future. And that's not the story that we go back to the very beginning of the discussion. That isn't the story that he wanted to tell. And so therefore, if someone else wants to tell that story, they're free to. I am glad I watched this. I thought that the acting was really well done. And you know, we kind of sort of got a happy ending with our two leads. I wonder, does Forrest deserve a happy ending? Because he's really, in a lot of ways, been quote unquote evil at pursuing this program. And I do think it was funny that making it Deus was kind of an inside joke to him. And it turns out it was a God machine in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that he gets resurrected, which bugs me. He didn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve a happy ending. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Lily, however, I think did deserve her happy ending. And I do like that she's able to confront Sergei. It gives her a sense of closure with that. Because I think one of the things that drove her was not having closure with the fact that he was a Russian agent and she didn't know about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just...
And it's interesting, the reality, right? They walk by Pete and she kind of looks at him. You see Stuart and Lyndon like in the courtyard, like in a bench talking. So everyone is in that world. And it leaves you where, what is she going to do? Where are we going to go? And I love I do like that. Let's have coffee. We'll have coffee. Let's see each other again. Because, you know, they're the only two that knows that this is a scenario. And then he goes back to playing Frisbee and hanging out with his wife and daughter in the field where Devs was. So his mind, he got everything he wanted.
Yeah, this ending is very Dark Tower-ish. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I think the other thing with good stories is that the ending is surprising, but inevitable. Like once you sit back and go, oh, of course, that makes total sense. Like again, I'll turn to Lord of the Rings. Like when the ring is destroyed and we all think, oh, great. Like this is, you know, everything's resolved. But then at the very end, Frodo has to go to the Grey Havens because he's got this injury and plus he's carried the ring. He's been forever changed by it. So that makes it a surprise that at the time he goes, but when you sit back and think about it, and go, oh, but of course that makes total sense. And I don't think that this show had that. It was an inevitable ending that if anybody's read any little bit of science fiction or watched other shows, it ended up exactly where we thought it was going to end up. And I think that's, from a storytelling perspective, that's disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I was worried that you guys would just go, oh, I hate that I watched this. So I'm glad.
I just hope that you're not disappointed that we're not gushing about that.
No, you have the same opinions that I have.
Okay.
I mostly like the story in between from episode 2 to episode 7.
Yep.
Those I think are incredible storytelling, and the acting was never subpar. Even in the last episode, the acting was amazing.
Yeah, technically, it was well done. Some great visuals, and the music was well done. The cinematography, all the technical stuff when that was done, but it all comes down to storytelling, and that's what's the difference between something that's merely good and something that becomes a classic. And this will be, for me, something that was really good, but it'll never be something that I'll build into my pantheon of things that I think are classic.
Right.
Yeah, I want to say I'm really glad I watched this, and I would not have seen it, but it is not okay, so far we've only done 2 one-offs, and by far Midnight Mass was significantly better. I think both unique perspectives on no spoilers, but a certain horror genre. They did a unique take on this, and this is a unique take on time travel and predestination, and are we the master of our own fate? So I'm really happy I saw it, but I agree. I would give this I went out of my way to tell people, hey, if you haven't seen Midnight Mass, whoa, you need to go see Midnight Mass. This, I'd go, hey, it's interesting. If you got some time, this will be an interesting show to watch. But I wouldn't go, oh my goodness, drop everything and see it, which I think this was a perfect choice for us to have a discussion because there's enough meat on the bones for us to have this discussion.
Right. And it's something that we can actually say, okay, I didn't like the ending. Because, we tend to watch or read things that we already know we're going to like.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
It's good that we see something that, okay, the ending sucked, but we all liked the concept and the writing, that kind of thing. Yeah. So again, I was torn on whether to choose this as something, but I'm glad you guys like it.
I just want to be clear. I don't think the ending sucked. I just don't think it elevated itself to something else beyond what the show had set up.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's well said. I was happy with, we got an ending. I did think that's funny. I said, I wonder what Lou's going to think because he said, I'm going to be unhappy if this has been a scenario the whole time, like a simulation. Like, well, it wasn't a simulation the whole time. It ended with a simulation. So good on you for using simulation in the prediction, but that isn't exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I am happy in the fact that they didn't just go for the easy out in this.
Yeah.
They used elements of that easy out storyline, but, he didn't bring his daughter back to life. He has a happy ending, but it's not what we saw coming 100%. Lily gets a happy ending, which I thought was really good. That was the one thing I was worried about through the whole thing is we see her dying. Is she going to get this happy ending? So I was hoping that it would be that she would be able to take her own decision in the last episode and everything turns out for her. And the machine is dead because I wanted the machine to go away. I don't think there's any good outcome of having a machine that can predict the future and to show you the past.
Exactly.
Time travel is a whole different thing, but seeing into the future is dangerous in my opinion.
Yeah.
I do think that Alex Garland decided he was going to end this with a lot of questions. And that's why we're left scratching our heads at the end going, okay, what happened just now? I try and fill in the blanks a little bit with the machine is dead. Katie's going to do this. Stuart's going to do this.
Yeah.
We don't get those answers. And we also don't get answers as to, what happens in those simulations. Is Forrest still building his machine in that simulation? Because he was already building it at the time that this simulation started. What happens to Sergei? Does he actually die? Now Lily is removing herself from that equation. So that means that she won't be hunted by Kenton, which, that's a good thing. But what things do happen in that simulation? And we're not supposed to know. Obviously, we're not supposed to know. And this is an instance of he didn't finish it the way I want him to finish it, but he finished it in the way that he finished it. That's his prerogative. I have never held the belief that someone needs to tell a story the way I want him to tell a story.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm glad he finished it his own way, but I wish there was something different in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a balancing act. Like I think the best art is slightly open-ended or it leaves room for interpretation so that we can all have a common frame of reference, but we all come away with it with slightly different things. It's like the Mona Lisa, like, why is she smiling? We never know, but it's fun to speculate about it. Or but we all have the same reaction that this is a great piece of art, and that smile is very enigmatic. So I like that, but you also have to be careful to balance that openness with satisfaction. And again, the ending was fair and honest, but I just wanted something a little more emotionally satisfying.
Right. Yep. I get it 100%.
Yep.
So one of the last things I wanted to ask you guys is, after watching this, has it reformed something in your mind about free will? Do you still have exactly the same opinion of it? Or has this made you think about things a little bit?
My opinion's unchanged, and it's basically I don't know. and I think that's the central problem with this is it's like, what is death? Like, we'll never know until we die, right? Like, so how can you answer a question that's not answerable? And I this is one of those types of questions. You think about it, but you basically just go in circles and end up coming back to saying, I don't know.
Right.
Great question, because I often think of that. I'm just watching, I binge Sandman, and we know it's a happy ending because we know when to stop the story. There is, to get a little serious, have people, oh, Jesse, prayers answered. You had colon cancer. You're able to go through chemo. You're now cured. Oh, what a blessing. Thank you. I appreciate that. But wasn't it God who gave me colon cancer to begin with? If that's the thing. Oh, I'm so happy you got your job, Jesse. I know you were really struggling, you're unemployed, and now then you've been given a job. Well, okay, then was he the guy who laid me off? I don't mean that sacrilegious. I just don't know where that is. There have been times in my lives, Monday morning quarterbacking, what I saw, I thought was a really bad thing ended up being a good thing for me in my life. And so I don't know. I like to think that if I'm Lyndon, I don't get on that bridge. I go, no. I mean, if you can't tell me I'm going to live, if you're telling me that if I pass this test, I get the job, you already know this. I mean, I just wouldn't done that. I would have gone on. So I'm like Lou. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I like to think that there is a purpose to what we do, but I know what I try to do is to be kind to people, to try to be as good as I can be to those around me and hope for the best. It sometimes feels like there's a lot of just bad crap going out there that you go, where is this? What is it going? Where are we going? So that's it. It did give you that thought, like, is this predetermined? Is there, no matter what, the whole pin thing? The reason the pin rolled is because of this.
That's a great point, Jesse, that I didn't really think about until now. It was like we've been giving Katie crap for that Lyndon scene, but Lyndon, and I guess we're easier on him because he's so young. I mean, he's a genius, but emotionally he's a kid. So when he's faced with that choice, as an adult, we would say, no, I'm not going to die for a job. But for this kid, it was, when you're a kid and you want something, like, this is your whole universe. So for them, it's a little more understandable, but the choice that Lyndon makes too is not the right choice, or the choice that a lot of us would make. And I think that's something that to bear in mind. And Katie is the adult in the situation, which is why I'm giving her more grief. But there is two sides to that story, which I don't think we really brought up until you just mentioned that. So I thank you for doing that.
Well, we go back to, right, if she knows he is going to die, then why would you push that? And it's because, well, I'm supposed to. Okay, now I have a headache.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm
it's
being
above
silly,
my pay grade.
Right?
That's why I did
that.
That's why bad things happen, because people don't question it or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I am firmly in the camp that we have free will.
Yeah.
Now, whether that means something's predetermined in a larger sense, like Lou was saying, macro versus micro, that's not anything I want to think about long term, because it makes my brain hurt. But I feel like I have free will in my day-to-day life, and I would like that to be true, just personally. So I loved that Lily made that choice at the end, because she's me, that's proving that what I feel is what's happening in that world. So all right, so you guys watched it. We pretty much all land on the same page. I'm glad you enjoyed the meat of the series. Now it's Jesse's turn coming up.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? You want to do Station 11?
Sure.
I'm okay with it.
I'm curious about your pick on this because I've just finished the book. So I'm going to be curious to see what's different about the series and the book that makes you want us to watch this. So yeah, that should be interesting.
Also, we have 3 different things. I haven't read the book or watched the series. Jesse's watched the series and you've read the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool.
So the reason I'm curious is because 1, I want to rewatch it. And 2, this is a journey that, unlike Devs, I feel like, spoilers, does stick the ending that says, oh, I see what they were doing, but it'd be curious to watch this. Did you enjoy the book?
It was a weird experience because while I was reading it, I kept on going, okay, this is really well written, but where is this going? And then by the time you get to the end of it, you have to sit back for a minute and say, oh, okay, I get it. This, and I can't really get into details because it'll spoil it, but it was a realization that, again, really, that it's the journey and not the destination that is what this story was all about. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it at.
Okay.
But I ended up
okay, that's good.
liking the book quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so good. So that'll be good. So that'll be nice. Unfortunately, it's long, so it's 10 episodes. So that'll give us, we'll do 2 a week. And so we'll go from there. Sounds awesome. So Lou, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
You can find me on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where you will find these episodes under the JKL Media playlist, and on Twitter at Lou W. Sytsma, SYTSMA, or the Stephen King Podcast.
All right, Karen.
You can find me at Elevaria on Twitter and most everywhere else. Again, I'm at Elevaria. Even Goodreads, I'm at Elevaria. And there's a link in my bio to my blog, so you can look there and see what I'm reading.
Good. Well, I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. Would love to hear from you guys. JKLB5 podcast at gmail.com. If you have suggestions on what we should discuss next, we're going to continue this trend. We're going to go through Babylon 5 once episode a week, provided no one's out of town. And then we'll round robin, just picking general shows. And then we're going to do the Netflix of dropping them all at one time.
Yep.
So that'll be fun. And I did want to publicly, Lou, thank you for doing all the editing. And Karen has stepped up and said, Jesse, you seem to be struggling with episodes.
I didn't say that, but
I am saying,
I'm happy to write a little blurb.
Discussion. So yeah, that's a big nice. So we're all in this together. All right, listeners, be safe, take care, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And see.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.